Good morning. How are you today, children and parents of St. Jude's, Brampton? My name is Amelia, and I am happy to bring the message today. Today is the 23rd Sunday of the year 2024. You've just had your first week of school. Either if you were new to school or if this is a return to school, I hope you have a very great year and learn lots of cool stuff. The book that we're reading from is The Complete Children's Liturgy Book by Katie Thompson, published by 23rd Publication. And today's lesson is titled Jesus Cures a Deaf Man. So let's start. Unless we know someone who is deaf, we are taking the gift of hearing for granted. We never stop to imagine how different our lives would be if we could not hear. Today we hear how one deaf man's world would never be the same again. This is from the story of Mark 7, verses 31 through 37. So let's start. Jesus was returning to the Sea of Galilee when some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could not speak properly. They asked Jesus to help their friend. Jesus was filled with pity and led the man away to a quiet place where he touched his ears and touched his tongue with his hands, and looking up to the heavens said, "Be opened!" And at once the man could hear and speak clearly. The man and his friends were amazed, and they told everyone they met about the miracle Jesus had performed. So in discussion, I'd like to ask you to close your eyes and sit very quietly and listen to all the sounds around you. What do you hear? Do you hear the TV on in the other room? Maybe you hear your parents making you lunch in the kitchen. Maybe you hear a dog barking in the neighbor's yard. Well, let's try this. Now, put your hands really tightly over your ears and try and listen again. What did you hear? It was really difficult, wasn't it? How different would it make your lives if you couldn't hear? There's things like you couldn't listen to music, or you wouldn't be able to hear what others are saying. You wouldn't be able to understand the TV easily, and the traffic outside. How dangerous would it be if you couldn't hear the cars coming? But worst of all, what if you couldn't hear the words, "I love you" again? Deaf people today communicate by using sign language and lip reading to hold conversations. Some television programs have subtitles and write the words that are being spoken on the screen so deaf people can understand them. How do you think the deaf man must have felt when Jesus cured him? Suddenly his silent world was broken by the sounds all around him. Sounds that he'd never heard before. He found that he could speak clearly and make himself understood. Jesus had totally changed his life by his act of kindness, and it would never be the same again. What do you imagine were the first things that he heard? Perhaps the first thing he heard was Jesus' own voice. It would be really nice to imagine that the first thing the man did when he could speak clearly was thank Jesus for changing his life and enabling him to hear and speak. So in our book today, the craft is a comic. And if you ask your parents, they can come and see me, and I will gladly provide them a copy so that you can also do the comic and color it to make it more fun. This is the story of Simon. Here you see him sitting. He was very sad that he can't hear or speak properly. He can't hear the birds singing in the tree. His friends took him to see Jesus, who touched his ears and his tongue. And suddenly Simon could hear the birds and said, "Thank you. Thank you for being so kind and making me well again." After which they had a big party, and Simon told all the people about his friend Jesus, who made him better. Isn't that a great comic? In closing, let's do our prayer. Let's put our hands together and close our eyes and say together, "Dear God, we thank you today for the gift of hearing. Help us to listen to and appreciate all the wonderful sounds around us, and to pray for all of those who only know the sound of silence. Amen." I hope you have another great week at school, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday in our next message. Have a great week and be kind to each other. Bye bye.